covering the Cookie Lady, which is a part of your syllabus for upcoming class 12 2027 examination. And what will we be doing today, or how will we be studying Cookie Lady? So the way we'll be studying Cookie Lady is by focusing on the important elements of the chapter, certain explanation which need emphasis. There might be certain explanation which would be quite easy enough, so I would not go into details of those. And also for those who are watching this video later, make sure to comment if you find it any difficulty in understanding, if there's anything that you would want to know about in details, anything of such sort, you're more than welcome to do so. So do that. And if you do like the way I teach, the the attempts that I'm making, then do share it among your friends, so that everyone, as I said, my motive here is that each and every child gets the best guidance so that they can do well for their examination. Or if not even that, then definitely they can understand the text well enough, be better readers and writers, because that's what we want. Okay, so the Cookie Lady. Along with that, again, if you're sitting and if you're joining one of these live sessions, or later when you're watching these live sessions, what I would like to tell you is sit with a pencil or a notebook or anything of that sort, because I'll be telling some adjectives which you can use, certain sections which you can highlight, things in which you can shape your answer. These are small nuggets of information which sometimes comes in the flows of teaching, and it will help you to shape your understanding, shape your notes more better. Okay, so without waiting any further, let's start. The Cookie Lady by Philip K.Dick. Now, before we go into the explanation of the Cookie Lady by Philip K.Dick, what is the premise of the chapter? All of you, I assume, has Prism, so they would be having the book. So I would still try to turn the camera and then make sure that I focus on the text, so that you people are, or when you're watching, you can follow. Otherwise, you already have your text, so you can definitely just listen to it and listen to my explanation while reading the text. It makes things more accessible, more easier, right? So yeah, because any chapter that we are studying, either for ICSC or ISC, but people who are here for ISC, they already know this, that what you need to do is you need to focus on what is the premise of the chapter, what is the setting of the chapter, where is the chapter, where can you locate the chapter, right? That's important for us to know. So Cookie Lady is actually a kind of story which talks about it talks about as your this would say, as your prism as your prism explanation would say, that's a story of terror, chilling and memorable. What is story of terror? Something that evokes a feeling of darkness within us. So what it does is it brings us with this feeling of darkness, and we are left with something haunting. So the word that we can use is haunting. That's the word that we could use for writing our answers is terror. So terror, haunting, those are the things that we can use while shaping our answers for writing for the examination, to write for the examination. Okay, now the story is perhaps quite interesting, and we'll get into the details of it. Where you going, Bubba? Ernie Mills shouted from across the street, fixing papers for his route. So where you going, Bubba? So Ernie Miller, perhaps a paper boy, is asking Bubba, that Bubba is a boy. Bubba, where you going? Shouted Ernie Miller from across the street, fixing papers for his route. The papers that he's going to fling, he's going to throw while he is going to deliver the papers. Okay, no place, Bubba surly said. No place. So Bubba is being reserved at this point. Again, each character, each response is supposed to be it's supposed to be investigated, it's supposed to be understood, as in, if this character is saying this, why is the character saying that? So see beta, the way for doing or learning a text or understanding a text lies in the fact that if we pay attention enough, then things become easier. There's no shortcut, there's no formula, there's nothing of that sort that is going to help you, make you gain something. Nothing of that sort is going to happen. What is going to happen is that if you pay keen attention while studying the text, you are surely going to ace it. You're surely going to know how to write an answer. You're surely going to, all you people need is just a little bit of guidance. Otherwise, you are capable enough to do that. but you have to pay attention that if this character, because now that ISC and ICSC basically has started giving you questions on character analysis, has started, in fact in class 11 12 you have those 5 marks and 10 marks question answers. So you have to write about, for example, character study of Baba. So you have to write about that. So no place, Baba Surly said, you going to see your lady friend? Ernie laughed and laughed. What do you go visit that old lady for? Let us on in it. Let us on in it. Share with us. Share the secret with us as well. Let us on in it. Again, look at the language. So the language is quite colloquial. Colloquial is the way a language is spoken more than a way a language is written. So the language is quite colloquial. Okay. So you going to see your lady friend? Ernie laughed and laughed. What do you visit that old lady for? Let us on. And it is poking fun. So Ernie is a kind of a character who pokes fun at other people. It's poking fun. Baba went on, but Baba did not reply. He did not respond. He just went on. Okay. He turned the house and went down Elm Street. Already you could see the house at the end of this street set back a little on the lot. He turned, already you could say, so what did Baba do? Went down Elm Street, he turned the corner, went down Elm Street, and already you could see the house at the end of the street set back a little on the lot. So it was just set back a little. So the place, the way, the location, okay, the place where the house is located is also at a little distant away from other places, already set back a little on the lot, just set back a little. So from this point itself, the writer is emphasizing, the writer is hinting at the fact that Babur is entering a realm, Babur is entering an area of desolation. If you people, I'm sure you did your Macbeth Act 1 Scene 1, the witches meet on a heath. So a desolated place, right? A place which is devoid of human presence. So since the place, I'm talking about Macbeth, devoid of human presence, it sets the natural setting in the mind of the reader that, okay, this is a place which is lonely. Especially what comes to my mind at this point is like when you are watching a horror movie, you'd see how these scenes where the ghost or the spirit comes is a scene which is desolated, is a scene where no one else is there, the main character, the protagonist find themselves all alone, right? Because that is how our psychology works. Similarly here, the house is itself a little on the lot. Okay, sorry, where was I? Set back a little on the lot. So set back a little on the lot. Set back a little on the lot. Okay. Why I'm emphasizing all this? You could say, ma'am, this is just one line. Why? Because to understand how the text goes on, how the text flows, we are, as my approach is not that, okay, we are going to learn this, do that, this is the answer, this is the formula. No, we are going to understand the text well enough. When you do things well enough, you already ace at it. You don't need to, then figure out a shortcut, a formula or something of that sort. Okay. So already you could see the house at the end of the street and set back little on the lot. The front of the house was overgrown with weeds, and this is where you can start underlining. Why? Because can give us that 5-mark question or an MCQ description of the house. The front of the house was overgrown with weeds. Important. The front of the house had a lot of was abound with weeds. Okay, abound in weeds rather. Sorry. The front of the house was overgrown with weeds, old dry weeds that rustled and chattered in the wind. Again, one thing that comes to mind, weed also is symbolic. Why is weed symbolic? Because weeds are supposed to be unwanted plants. Weeds are not plants people would say that they would want to plant over. It's not something that people prefer. It supposedly grows at a place that is unwanted. It grows unwanted. No one plants a weed specifically until they're doing for some particular purpose. So here something that is unwanted, so old dry weeds, and the weeds are also not very healthy. The weeds are not very green weeds. No, they are not that. They are old dry weeds. Okay, with weeds, old dry weeds, it rustled and chattered in the wind. The house itself was a little grey box, shabby and unpainted. So the house was, again, the description of the house, so description of the front yard, it's full of weeds, which means, and when does also another thing that comes to mind, when does weeds, when do you find weeds growing in a garden, in a front yard? When it is an unkept garden, when in a garden which has not been maintained properly, when it is a garden which has not been looked after properly. So in this setting, that the house, the front yard of the house was overgrown with weeds, what does this tells us about the place? That it is a place which is not, it is not a place which is thriving with life. It's a place which is actually devoid of life, right? That's there. So the front of the house was overgrown with weeds, old dry weeds that rustled and chattered in the wind. And it is through these descriptions that the writer is doing what? It is through these descriptions that the writer is doing what? That the writer is trying to, writer is trying to create that mental image in the mind of the reader. Okay, writer is trying to create the mental image in the mind of the reader. Writer is trying to create that image of how the house is such a place, how the house is a place which is desolated, how the house is a place which does not have any kind of greenery around it. So creating that how this house almost stands as a character here. The house itself was the little grey box, shabby and unpainted. So a house that has not also been well maintained, unpainted. The porch steps sagging, and if the porch steps, the steps that leads to the house, as in a typical American structure, okay, architecture that you have, and even the steps of the porch towards the porch was sagging, right? There was an old weather beaten rocking chair, and even the rocking chair was old weather beaten. So even the rocking chair was not a rocking chair that was functional. It was an old weather beaten rocking chair, so old chair, worn out chair on the porch with a torn piece of cloth hanging over it, and a torn piece of cloth was dangling over it. So again, overall, what is the writer giving? What impression does the writer leaves us with? The impression that the writer leaves us with is the fact that the house is a place which the house is a place which does not, the house is a place which does not which does not feel inviting or feel welcoming. Okay, Babar went up the walk. As he started on the rickety steps, rickety beta, something that is not sturdy, rickety steps, he took a deep breath. He could smell it, the wonderful warm smell, and his mouth began to water. So look at the, even before Baba meets someone, the writer tells us about the connection. Okay, he could smell it, the wonderful warm smell, and his mouth began to water. This is the point that is going to connect us with that is going to connect Babar with, this is the point that connects Babar with the house. Okay, his heart thudding with anticipation, Babar turned the handle of the bell. Okay, the bell grated rustily. Again, even the bell is grating rustily. So everything about this house shows what? Everything about this house shows that it is kept, that it's almost dilapidated. It is dilapidated, not almost dilapidated, but it is in a dilapidated state. It is in a ruined state. Nothing is flourishing, nothing is thriving here. And in this kind of setting, what do we see? What could we observe? We observe that how Babar, being a young bundle of energy, someone who's new, someone who's fresh, is going in such a place, is going inside such a place. Okay, Mrs. Drew opened the door. The bell grated rustily on the other side of the door. There was silence for a time, then the sound of someone stirring. So there was silence, and then someone stirred. Mrs. Drew opened the door. She was old, very old, a dried up old lady. Now what comes to the mind? Before we saw how the weeds were old dry weeds, right? The weeds were old dry weeds. And now what do we have here? We have the lady, old dried up lady. Everything that has almost been sponged out of life, everything that has been sponged out of life, that is what it is being said here. It's being conveyed here. She's an old, very old, a little old dried up lady. Like the weeds that grew along the front of the house. Right? She was just like that, the similar to the weeds, right? And she's old, very old, dried up lady. You can mark that. That could be your, again, explanation. That's there. She smiled down at Baba, holding the door wide for him to come in. So she smiled down at Baba and holding the door. So she's welcoming towards Baba. Okay. You're just in time, she said. Come on inside, Bernard. You're just in time. They're now ready. Come on inside, Bernard. So now we know that Bubber's name was not exactly Bubber. Bubber's name was Bernard. So come inside, Bernard. You're just in time. They're just ready. They're just now ready. They're just now. I've prepared them. Okay. Bubba went to the kitchen door and looked in. He could see them resting on a big blue plate on the top of the stove. Cookies, a plate of, you can underline that will be important. Cookies, a plate of warm fresh cookies right out of the oven, cookies with nuts and raisins in them. So again, what does this reveal to us? This reveals to us about the Bubber's mental state. For him, as I said, before he could enter, he says he could smell, the writer says he could smell it, the wonderful warm smell, and his mouth began to water. So this is the connection, this is the point which makes him come to this house and look at his desire. Look at his desire, because cookies, a plate of warm fresh cookies, for him cookies, plate of warm fresh cookies right out of the oven, cookies with nuts and raisins. This is the appeal. And why is the writer writing? Because this is the appeal that the cookies hold for Bubba. How do they look? Mrs. Drew said. She rustled past him. Again, look at the word that the writer is using. Rustled. Philip K.Dick is using rustled. So why rustle? Just like the weeds rustle. What is the meaning of rustle? Rustle means a light movement, a light brush. That's rustled. So why again? So somehow gently the writer is trying to do what? Is trying to show to us that how this lady is almost like an old weed, doesn't have much energy, has that, this is old dried up weed. Okay, she rustled past him into the kitchen, and maybe some cold milk too. Okay, she says to him, you like cold milk with them? She got the milk pitcher from the window box on the back porch. Then she poured a glass of milk for him and set some of the cookies on a small plate. Let's go into the living room. And she invites him in the living room. Okay, Bubba nodded. Mrs. Drew carried the milk and the cookies in and set them on the arm of the couch. Then she sat down in her own chair, watching Bubba plop himself. When is plop? When you almost drop yourself down on the seat. Plop himself down by the plate and begin to help himself eat. Begin to help himself eat. He began to help himself. He began to eat. Okay. Bubba ate greedily as usual, intent on the cookies, silent except for the chewing sound. So all of this reveals to us Bubba's desire, Bubba's longing for cookie. Bubba is a foodie. He loves cookies, and that is why he comes to this desolated place where he's given a plate of warm cookies. Okay. Mrs. Drew waited patiently until the boy had finished and his already ample side means excessive sides bulged that much more, and his already ample sides became swollen, is in the sense bulged, because he has eaten a lot of cookies. When Bubba was done with his plate, he glanced toward the kitchen and the rest of the cookies on the stove. Wouldn't you like to wait until later for the rest? Mrs. Drew said. Won't you like to wait a little bit? Okay. All right, Bubba agreed. How were they? Fine. That's good. She leaned back in her chair. Well, what did you do in school today? How did it go? She's asking, what did you do? How did you do? She's getting to know him. Okay. Changing certain words, getting to know him, getting to know his whereabouts. Okay. All right. The little old lady watched the boy look restlessly around the room. Bernard, she said presently, won't you stay and talk to me for a while? So what, this is the point when we go deeper into character analysis of Bernard or character analysis of Bubba. So what can we see, what kind of character sketch can we draw of Bubba or Bernard? The character sketch that we can draw of Bubba or Bernard is that Bubba being a young, energetic child who is a foodie, who loves food. It is his love for cookie, warm cookie, that draws him to the house of Mrs. Drew. And once he has eaten his cookie, once he has had his fill of cookie, what does he do? He looks at, he glances, being childlike, he glances at the plate that's kept there on the stove. But then Mrs. Drew obviously invites him in for conversation, and the little old lady watched the boy look restlessly around the room. Bernard, she said, won't you stay and talk to me for a while? although he accepts that, all right, well, what did you do in school today, how did it go, he says all right, okay. But after answering that to her, he's looking around restlessly because he is there for cookies. So he's looking out restlessly. Why does he look out restlessly? Because that reveals to us how he's solely there for cookies, okay. And being a child, obviously he's not there for conversation, he's not there for in-depth profound conversation, he's there for cookies. Bernard, she said presently, won't you stay and talk to me for a while? He has had some books on his lap, some school books, okay. So she's asking, won't you stay? And on the other hand, we have a lady who's almost asking him to stay, almost no, who's asking him to stay, who's trying to engage him in a conversation, okay. Why don't you read to me from your books? You know, I don't see too well anymore, and it's a comfort for me to be read to. So why don't you read? So till now, the picture that Philip K.Dick, the writer, has painted us of of Mrs. Drew, is that Mrs. Drew is perhaps a kind lady. Mrs. Drew is perhaps a lady, warm, welcoming lady who offers cookies to a child, and then she wishes to know how he's doing well in school. Then she wishes to know that, like, why don't you read to me? It's an old lady, perhaps seeking companionship. That's what we know. That's what we know of Mrs. Drew so far. Why don't you read to me from your books? You know, I don't see well anymore, and it's comfort for me to be read to. Can I have the rest of the cookies after? Again, so you can underline that in a reflection of Babar's desire. Babar being there for cookie, he's like, can I have the rest of the cookies then? Because that is his point. That is his almost, Achilles heel. That's his weakness. That's his point, that he's there for the cookies. He's like, okay. Just like a child, if you want a child to do something for you, you would, you'll say, okay, you do this, then I'll offer you that. That's the kind of exchange that's happening here. Of course. And she says, of course, I'll offer you the cookie. Baba moved over towards her to the end of the couch. He opened his books, World Geography, Principles of Arithmetic, Hoyt's Speller. Which do you want? She hesitated. The geography, okay. Baba opened the big blue book at random. So he did not open at any page or anything of that sort. He opened the big blue book at random. Peru. And he started reading about Peru, okay. Peru is bounded on the north by Ecuador and Colombia, on the south by Chile, on the east by Brazil and Bolivia. Peru is divided into 3 sections. These are, so he's reading the basic monotonous description given of Peru. The little old lady watched him read, his fat cheeks wobbling. Underline his fat cheeks wobbling. So it's fat cheeks wobbling. What does his fat cheeks wobbling? Again, emphasis on the physical description of Babar. Fat cheeks are wobbling. Okay, wobbling means they are moving from side to side, and so wobbling, full of. As he read, unsteady. Wobbling is basically being unsteady. As he read, holding his finger next to the line, she was silent, watching him, studying the boy intently as he read, drinking in. You can underline from studying the boy intently as he read, and then drinking in each frown of the concentration, every motion of his arms and hands. She relaxed, letting herself sink back in her chair. He was close to her, only a little way off. There was only the table and the lamp between them. How nice it was to have him come. He had been coming for a month now, ever since the day she had been sitting on the porch and see him go by, and thought to call to him, pointing to the cookies by her rocker. So this actually informs us how this exchange between Babar and the cookie lady, or Babar and Mrs. Drew, began, and also the description, the way she's almost watching Babar is a reflection of her character. So another aspect of her character is revealed. By now what we saw is that Babar, that Mrs. Lady, the character sketch of Mrs. Lady, the way the writer described Mrs. Drew, was that Mrs. Drew was a figure, a warm, welcoming old lady offering cookies, getting to know the child. But now an additional layer is added. What is that additional layer? She's watching that child intently as he's reading, drinking each frown of concentration, every motion of his arms and hands. She relaxed, and once she sees this, she relaxed, letting herself sink back in the chair. And so it's almost like she is getting fixated on this boy, right? Earlier it was just cookies, and but now that he's reading, she's watching him intently. She's focusing on him. Mm, hmm. Why had she done it? She did not know. So she herself didn't had an idea that why did she call her to Babar? Why did she point to the cookies? She had been all alone so long that she found herself saying strange things and doing saying strange things and doing strange things. She saw so few people. Only when she went down to the store, the mailman came in with a pension check or the garbage man. So you can put this within bracket and you can write isolated figure. So she's an isolated figure. Why is she an isolated figure? Because she has been all alone. So maybe she has done it out of isolation. She had been alone so long that she found herself saying strange things and doing strange things, and since she saw very few people, okay, so she is someone who's quite isolated, different, and I said this itself had been established by the writer from the description of the house. The description of the house was set back a little on the lot. It's only Babar who's entering her, desolate space. The boy's voice droned on. Droned on means went on in a monotonous way, went on, droned on. She was comfortable, peaceful, and relaxed. The little old lady closed her eyes and folded her hands in her lap. So Baba's reading almost has an effect on her. Baba's reading almost has an effect on her. And what is the effect? She feels herself getting more and more into that state of comfort, state of tranquility. The old lady was beginning to change, and as she sat dozing and listening, something began to happen. So change occurred. Okay, by now she's all well settled. As readers, we are all well settled. We feel like, acha, this is what is happening. This is what is going on. But the little old lady was beginning to change, her grey wrinkles and lines dimming away. So her grey wrinkles and lines are now dimming away. They're becoming more and more less. Okay. As she sat in the chair, she's growing younger. And as she sat on the chair while she's listening to Babar, she's growing younger. The thin, fragile body filling out with youth again. So fragile, weed-like body is now becoming youth, is being filled with energy. Okay. The grey hair thickened and darkened. The grey hair, which was thin, has now thickened and darkened. Color coming to the wispy strand, color coming to the strands of the hair. Her arms filled to the mottled flesh, turning a rich hue, becoming more colored, filled with blood, as it has been many years before. So while Babar is reading, this cookie lady or this woman, Mrs. Drew, almost has a revival of her youth. And now, so a critical point has appeared in the story when we see that what is, by now we knew that the Babar or Bernard came to Mrs. Drew's house for cookies. Being child, being someone who loved cookies, being someone who loved food, he came for cookies. And we saw that Mrs. Drew, and we could say, or we observed that Mrs. Drew was perhaps a warm, welcoming lady, but we now see that how she is also gaining something out of it. While Babar went on reading, this lady can actually revive her youth. Mrs. Drew breathed deeply, not opening her eyes. She could feel something happening, but she did not know just what. Something was going on. So this lady who had been a figure of isolation, this lady who was almost shriveled and come to that point where she has been shrunken, shriveled like weeds, is now slowly coming back to who she was. She's attaining her youth, or perhaps rather than attaining, she's restoring her youth. But she did not know just what. Something was going on. She could feel it, and it was good. But what was it? She did not exactly know. It had happened before, almost every time the boy came and sat by, especially of late since she had moved her chair nearer to the couch. She took a deep breath. How good it felt. You can underline that. How good it felt. The warm fullness, a breath of warmth inside a cold body for the first time in years. So that sense of energy, that sense of, life force that she gets from Baba, that's what is essential for her. In her chair, the little old lady had become a dark-haired matron of perhaps 30, woman with full cheeks and plump arm and legs. So all of her, it's almost like all of her body is being filled up. Her lips were red again, her neck even a little too fleshy as it had been in long forgotten past. So she is becoming younger. Suddenly the reading stopped. Baba put down his book and stood up. I have to go, he said. Can I take the rest of the cookies with me? She blinked, rousing herself, getting up. The boy was in the kitchen, filling his pockets with cookies. She nodded, dazed. Dazed is almost hypnotized. She's almost hypnotized because she's still under the spell of returning back to her youth. And that had come to an abrupt ending because Baba is like, I have to go. Still under the spell, the boy took the last cookies. He went across the living room to the door. Mrs. Drew stood up. All at once, the warmth left her. She felt tired, and very dry. So, again, she's coming back to that stage when she's that old lady again, when she does not have much energy, when she is deprived of all of her energy. She caught her breath, breathing quickly. She looked down at her hands, wrinkled and thin, and she sees that how her hands had returned back to being wrinkled and thin. Oh, she murmured. Tears blurred her eyes. So her eyes are blurred with tears. She's getting emotional. It was gone again as soon as he moved away. She tottered. What tottered is to walk unsteadily to the mirror above the mantel and looked at herself. Old faded eyes stared back, eyes deep set in withered face. You can line withered face. Again, one of the keyword that you can use for describing Cookie Lady. Gone, all gone as soon as the boy had left her side. I'll see you later, Baba said. So Baba said to her that okay, I'm going to see you later. Now, in the next session, next part of the live, we are going to cover the rest of the chapter, a little more of the chapter. And before I end this live, what is it that I would want you to focus on? I would want you to focus on that how by now we got to know that sense of yes, the word that was actually evading me was a sense of ominous, like being ominous. Okay, a sense of something ominous is about to happen. So not being ominous. So you get that sense of maliciousness, ominous by how not exactly on your face, but inexplicitly by by the description of the house being away. But still, when we enter the house, what do we see? We see that how the Cookie Lady is a warm figure, but later, as gradually we get deeper and deeper, we find ourselves being relaxed because we think, oh, it's a story about a sweet story about a child and an old lady. What Philip K.Dick does is he flips it, and what he does is he actually shows us that how this lady is also trying to gain something out of Babur. Perhaps, and another word that comes to mind is sinister. Perhaps more sinister, with more sinister intention. While the boy Bernard Babur is innocent, is childlike, is naive. Okay, he's naive, he's gullible. He's a small boy, young boy who just came there for cookies, right? This lady, on the other hand, is more sinister because something obviously is happening, because while he's reading, she is almost reviving her youth, and that's what has been happening. And all we know is that everything around this lady is wrinkled, withered, dry, sunken up, shriveled. Okay, all of that is there, and in this life that she has, what we can see is that Babur is a change. Babur is a change because Babur is full of life. Babur is also plumpy little kid, Allah, who loves munching cookies. So he's full of life, full of energy, and this full of ball of life and ball of energy enters into this face of this woman who's all dried up. That's what you've covered so far. But why is this important? Because this automatically shapes our understanding of the chapter when we are later writing our answers. Because what I see wants from us is that we've understood the text well enough, and our interpretations are presented in a way, our whatever answer, whatever we interpret of the character, it's presented in a way which makes sense to the person writing. If you're using good vocabulary, writing proper sentences, and you're writing straight to the point, you definitely are going to get the marks that you want to get. There's no one stopping you. Okay, but to do that, you have to make sure that you understand all of these things and try to assimilate it in your answer. I know I've done till page 145, so later on when you're watching the live, please do, watching this replay of the live, or please do sit with your book, read it till here. And if you do like the explanation, please do comment whatever you feel about the explanation, and share it with your friends if you feel it's worthy enough and it's to be shared, because it is going to help the people. And any suggestion out there, okay, because I think I one of the kids has said that, ma'am, I wanted you to explain the cookie lady. I don't exactly remember who, but so here I am putting up that video. So yeah, tell, and once if it's all fine, then I'll have another live soon. We'll cover the rest of the chapter. See you, have a great weekend, happy weekend, study well. Just a few months left for examination, so study well enough, keep at it, and I'm sure you're going to soar high, just like Julius Caesar. Maybe Julius is not a good example, but you're going to soar high. Okay, take care, bye bye, see you in the next life.